Welcome to Crossfire. I'm Stephanie Cutter on the left.
I'm SD Cupp on the right. In the Crossfire tonight, two members of Congress. Today, President Obama spent more time talking about what we aren't going to do in Iraq and why than he did making a case that the terrorist takeover of the Levant has serious implications for us here at home. How sad. George W. Bush may as well still be in the White House because President Obama can't seem to make any foreign policy decisions without thinking of him first. He often explains his inaction by way of his predecessor's mistakes. This was Obama on Syria last year.
The military plan that has been developed by our Joint Chiefs and that I believe is appropriate is proportional, it is limited, it does not involve boots on the ground. This is not Iraq and this is not Afghanistan.
And here was Obama just today on Iraq.
But what's clear from the last decade is the need for the United States to ask hard questions before we take action abroad, particularly military action.
Look, we know that he thinks Bush made mistakes, but this isn't 2006. It's time for Obama to finally become his own person and make the right decisions for America. And in Iraq, Bush is once again leading Obama toward dangerous inaction.
You know, I have to say I don't get it. What is wrong with understanding the consequences of going to war before you actually go to war?
Absolutely
and
nothing.
And that's exactly what the president is doing. The strategic blunders, the greatest strategic blunder in the history of this country was going to war without knowing the consequences in Iraq. And that's going to impact not just this president, but presidents for decades.
Clearly.
This is going to, George Bush is going to be, as you said, walking around the halls or living in the White House for decades.
We'll see.
In the Crossfire tonight, Representatives Loretta Sanchez, a California Democrat, and Representative Adam Kinzinger, a Republican from Illinois. I think I got that right.
You
right?
did. Good job. Really nice.
So, Congressman, I want to start with you. Here's the plan the president laid out today. 300 military advisors, an increase in intelligence, additional equipment, American-led diplomacy to get some political reforms on the ground in Iraq, and position our forces for a military strike. This is what I call a responsible approach, that we only come to by asking those tough questions. And you know, it might not make for good TV or satisfy armchair quarterbacks, but it's responsible. What more would you do here?
Well, I would do airstrikes. And look, I think it's a good start. I think it's a start that should have happened probably in January when ISIS took over Fallujah. We feel like we've been taken off guard, and there's this, oh my goodness, ISIS exists in there in Iraq. This has been existing for a very long time. And so while he puts these out there, I agree with these initial steps. But meanwhile, you have this blitzkrieg by ISIS that's going on, taking over city after city, beheading people, and creating their jihadist state in the end. I think airstrikes would stop the movement of ISIS in the town.
But one of the problems is knowing exactly where to strike.
Right.
And that's part of what this capability is going to allow us to do.
Right.
So better to get it right than to shoot from the hip?
Yeah, and keep in mind, when we left in 2011, we pulled basically the plug on our ability to have intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. That's what I did actually over there, flew ISR. So I think developing these targets now is good. And if he's not striking because we just don't have the intel, that's one thing. But when you have trucks moving out in the open, you can blow those up. You know pretty good. I mean, I know what they look like. You can blow those up and freeze ISIS in the towns they're in and stop their forward momentum.
Congresswoman Sanchez, we have reports that ISIS stole over $400 million from an Iraqi bank. Their flag is now flying over the country's biggest oil refinery. And there are some reports today that allege ISIS has seized Saddam Hussein's chemical weapons factory, which is frightening. Isn't it, as the congressman suggests, a little late maybe for intelligence forces on the ground?
No, it's not too late for intelligence forces on the ground. First of all, this whole issue that ISIS came across and is this blitzing sort of a personality, if you will, a grouping. It has to do with the fact that they have been in the Sunni belt of Iraq. And so even the locals would prefer to be dealing with the ISIS people than they did with Maliki. Maliki really did not take the openings, the space that we made for him, that our military made for him, that taxpayers of this country made for him to be able to work on uniting and working through this country. Instead, by being so Shiite-oriented, disoriented and really not working through with the Sunnis and the Kurds, he created the dilemma that we now find ourselves in. But I believe
Congressman, don't
when
you
these
think
ISIS people come
withdrawing
forward,
from Iraq actually created one of the dilemmas that we're in now?
Oh, I think it did. I mean, when we had, we could have done a status of forces agreement. If you want to see what negotiating a status of forces agreement looks like, look at what's happening in Afghanistan. It's been a year, and we keep going back saying, we want this, we want this, we want this. President Obama said, okay, you don't want 3,000 to 5,000 troops? Then we're out. I did my best. I can check the
Well, on that status of force agreement, I mean, we couldn't get a status of force agreement in Iraq when we had 150,000 troops on the ground.
We didn't try
under
hard.
Bush. Under Bush. Bush is the one that signed the agreement pulling our troops out.
Well, he signed the agreement in 2011.
The issue that this president didn't try hard enough is just ridiculous.
Again, it's easy to quarterback and say, oh, he didn't try. How do you know? You weren't in the room where we were trying to get it done.
I talked to a lot of people that were. And I'll tell you,
I got to tell you, that's just, this president tried, other people tried. This administration has more than just a president who were in the room. The military tried, and they did not want to go there. And as a congresswoman, when you were a troop, I wouldn't put you in a country like that without having a forces agreement like that. That is to protect you.
Well, let's back up. Let's talk about the status of forces agreement. Bush signed it to 2011, and he did it to give the next president the authority to determine the future of America's role in Iraq. That's respectful. The president did not do that in Afghanistan. He signed it to the end of 2016 because he wants to end it in his jurisdiction. But that hasn't been signed yet. So the president keeps going back, to his credit, to the Afghan government and saying, sign this. Karzai said no. He goes, okay, we'll wait for the next guy. Sign this. And we think it's going to happen. That's what negotiating for a SOFA looks like. And the last thing I'll point on that, the rumors are we were offering 3,000 to 5,000 troops. The political cost of Maliki for 3,000 to 5,000 troops would far exceed what 3,000 to 5,000 troops could basically do. They could cook meals and protect the fences. They couldn't go out and take out bad guys.
I want to bring up something that General Petraeus spoke about, and about U.S. involvement in Iraq recently at a conference in London. He said, and let's listen to this.
If there is to be support for Iraq, it has to be support for a government of Iraq that is a government of all the people. This cannot be the United States being the Air Force for Shia militias or a Shia on Sunni Arab fight.
I think you both would agree that we have to approach this very carefully so that we're not empowering one side or the other. The whole idea here is to have a unified government to end the sectarian violence. But, Congressman, this is a bit like detonating a bomb. You said we should just go in and do airstrikes. Who are we doing them on behalf of?
Well, we're doing them on behalf of the people who don't like Al-Qaeda or ISIS or Al-Qaeda. And so, yeah, I actually agree with what General Petraeus said. He said we do have to have a political solution. We do. I'd love to see al-Maliki go. I'd love to see a coalition government. The problem is, in my